Welcome to Cooperville.
Do you know what's fun to do in Cooperville? Pack up your shit and get the fuck out!
Listen. www.welcometocooperville.com. Who the fuck says www anymore? I can't even say it. www. Stop that. The Welcome to Cooperville podcast. On demand anywhere quality podcasts are available. And some places where cheap podcasts are available.
At the local gas station has some.
Subscribe, get updates, feel better about your life. Welcome to Cooperville.com.
Check one, check.
Welcome to Cooperville! Make sure you use a coaster. The wife gets upset when we leave rings on the tables.
So I finally had the opportunity after now 2 months of being out of the radio industry to go through all of my old interviews. It took me several weeks to gain access back to those audio files, but finally got a hold of them and went back through and listened to some of the interviews I'd done over the, more recently the last 5 to 6 years of my radio career. And really just remember getting back into the storytelling aspect of talking to artists and really finding out about their journeys, especially the album process. That was one of the things that always intrigued me while I was in the industry, was talking to different artists about how they go about the process of writing songs and putting albums out, and the good, the bad, and the ugly of album writing. And then the art of performing. There's a lot of different performing artists out there that really do an incredible job on their stage performance in many different visual aspects. You have guys that sometimes they just stand there and they let their music do their performing. Sometimes there's artists that combine music and energy into the show, and they're moving around and bouncing around and jumping into the crowds. And then you got the guys that throw pyro and video techniques and things like that in there. So what I wanted to do on this episode with no guests is relive some of those interviews that I did over the past couple of years. There'll probably be a few of these episodes that pop up throughout the course of the longevity of this podcast. But this first one, I just kind of dived into the really, to be honest, like the first fucking ones I could find. I was like, there are so many different interviews on this this hard drive. So I pulled up some of the ones I could find right off the bat. First and foremost, John Cooper of the band Skillet, who every time I would run into those guys, whether it was at Rockfest or at a different concert, I would always bring up the fact that, well, I'm Cooper, and then John Cooper, and then you got Corey Cooper. They're obviously married. I always had the concept of us going on tour together as the Coopers, but though that never did come to fruition, I did have a chance to talk to John about the album Unleashed when that came out and the process of going through that album. Here's John.
You know, the last record we made was the opposite. It was a really, really difficult record to make. And I think it's probably because, we had a lot of success on the record before that, which was called Awake. I think what happened was we kind of juked ourselves probably, which was the record came out and did, a lot better than I ever expected it to do, better than the label expected. I think better than everybody expected. And so then everybody got involved with the next project. Yeah. It was almost like, man, well, we weren't even people outside the band and the producer were a little like, we didn't even really work on this record, and look what happened. So if we work on it, it'll, Skillet will be the next, Nickelback or something. Right. And basically everybody got involved, and it was terrible. I don't hate the record, but I hated the process. We were fighting, yelling at each other in the studio with the producer and the label. And after that record came out, and it did well. I mean, the record just went gold a month ago, which was amazing. And so it's not that I didn't like it, but I was like, man, I am not recording a record like that again. I'm too old. Life's too short. I don't care enough. I just want to make a record that I really like. I want to have fun doing it. Screw all those people, basically. That's why we called the record Unleashed. If we weren't listening to too many people, we were just made the record we wanted to make and had a great time doing it.
I still think the Coopers has a great ring to it. I'm just saying. Next time John and I are together, I'm going to continue to reiterate, the Coopers, let's bring this thing on tour. I mean, I have no music ability, but still, it would be a good time. I could be the hype man. That could be my gig. Matt Brooks is my friend from New Zealand in a band called Like a Storm. Great group of guys, always awesome to talk to them. And when they were putting together the album Catacombs, I had a chance to talk to him after they put the album together about going through the process and also about the meaning behind Catacombs from Like a Storm. Here's Matt.
We worked really hard on this record, and we wanted to, we had this opportunity, having put out Awaken the Fire and toured the States, toured the world. We had an opportunity to really explore what the next evolution of our band could be. And so we took some time away from touring to focus on making Catacombs, and now we finished it, and it comes out next week. So we just, we can't wait for people to hear it. We felt that it was the right time to just sort of take our hands off the wheel and just let the music go where it wanted to go. Thematically, the album is about the things that we bury down inside ourselves, the things that we try and hide from the outside world. And so lyrically and musically, it's a pretty dark record.
Right.
But what was really interesting is that was just the music that we wrote when we allowed ourselves to be honest about, where the band was going and things that we were going through in our own lives.
Matt always used to have to correct me on the digideru. I still can't pronounce it to this day, but love those guys, like a storm. It is episode number 9 of the podcast, and what we're doing here is we're going through some of my interviews I've done over my past 20 years of radio. Great interview I had to do with Myles Kennedy of Alter Bridge. Also, of course, Myles fronts Slash's band with Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators. I learned so much about Myles that I did not know doing this interview. This is when Slash took his first break to go back in studio and work with Alter Bridge. They were just about to get back onto the road.
People are just looking for something that they can connect with, and I think that's something that Alter Bridge has always attempted to do is from a lyrical standpoint, touch on universal themes,
right.
Things that everybody experiences and can relate to. So it's cool to hear stories like that. I think that one of the things we've noticed years of touring is that we'll look into a very vast array of different types of listeners at our shows, and it's funny. My brother came to some shows over in Europe this last year, and he commented on that. He's like, "Man, you guys have a really wide demographic. Just so many different types of folks go to your shows, and that means a lot to us. It's very cool that been able to kind of tap into these different types of listeners. It's rad."
Another prime example of that is a really good friend of mine, is a graphic designer. He's all in the digital world, and wears a button-up shirt to work. And when my Champion came out, he was like, "You got to play my Champion more often. I love Alter Bridge." So it's such a,
that's cool.
The music just has such a feel to it, and I think that resonates with fans of all different backgrounds. But they all they find their message in the music. Speaking of the live show,
right.
My first time seeing you, that is just one of the most fun shows. It's so genuine. It's so rock and roll. I stood there and kind of soaked it all in, between you and Mark and the dueling that goes on back and forth. But just the feel in the crowd was positive and rock and roll. I enjoyed it thoroughly. So that live show, man, that is a spectacle, and I love it.
Thank you. That's what we try. That's what we try. Our goal is to try and have people leave feeling happy, and I think that the music is such a powerful medium in that respect, where not only can it bring people together, but it also can elevate emotions, and so when you hear stories like that, it certainly makes all the time away from family and away from home more than worthwhile. It makes you feel like you've got a real purpose.
Is there still a little the butterflies still get to you right before the curtain drops?
There can be. It really it kind of it depends on a number of different factors. But generally not as much as there used to be. But if something's being there's some sort of video element to it. In other words, if we're streaming a live show,
right.
or if we're doing something for a DVD, then you tend to get a little nervous. Or if you're doing some television show, that's where my nerves tend to kick in. But what I forget is that pretty much every show now is going to be online, regardless.
Somebody's watching.
With everybody in their phones and streaming, I think. It's funny. I used to get really bad stage fright. In fact, my stage fright was so bad when I was a kid that I didn't think I'd be able to be a musician. It was like kind of paralyzed me more or less. So just through years and years of doing it and kind of figuring out tricks of tricking your brain into calming down, I've managed to make a go of it.
That story always amazes me because you think of these artists when they get a chance to go on the stage and just own it. You never think about the nerves or the fact that there was a point in their lives when they didn't think they were going to be able to do what they wanted to do to, fulfill their dreams of being a musician or a rock star or a front man or a guitar player because of their innate fear of being in front of giant crowds. Myles Kennedy obviously has done very well for himself from Alter Bridge. My history with the guys in Sevendust goes back many, many years. Back when I was working on the first rock station that was in the market, Sevendust played like the first ever rock show at the hockey arena in the sprawling metropolis of Altoona. We had such a good time with the guys from Sevendust. We actually ended up after the show going downtown and hitting up a couple bars downtown Eau Claire and getting into massive amounts of trouble. I believe at the time I was incarcerated. Like I was on a work release program, but my work release hours were like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I timed it out appropriately for that one, but I digress. Years later, I had a chance to talk to John when they went from doing an acoustic album and they released some of those songs. Now, Sevendust has been around for, I think, longer than anybody realizes. So when they had a chance to do an acoustic album, they really enjoyed doing it. But then they realized after you do an acoustic album, all you really want to do is turn things up to 11. Here's John Connolly of Sevendust.
Yeah, the whole acoustic experience for us is it's a twofold thing because it gives our fans something that they've, seen little glimpses of and crave, but it also gives us that chance to kind of change gears. And when you change gears and you sit in that gear for a while, you don't realize how heavy you come back out. I mean, we were swinging for the fences as soon as we plugged back in. So, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of the beauty of this band, being able to switch gears from, something that's just so ridiculously over the top heavy to a song like Angel Sun. I mean, LeJean gives us the ability to use every gear in the gearbox.
I do have to ask, are you like the king of the whiteboard? Is that your thing? Like, don't touch John's whiteboard? Or
I'm telling you, man, I hate that thing, and I don't know why I get stuck with it. I'm the one who has to make the lines and all that stuff. So yeah, I guess over the years I've been the keeper of the boards. I've got a whole closet full of those things.
Do you have the best handwriting of everybody in the group?
No, it's like mine's like serial killer, borderline serial killer, like dentist. So somewhere in that realm is where I'm at. It's terrible. As a matter of fact, when we were doing, we wanted kind of more of a personal touch on Cold Day Memory, and I remember the guys, they hit me up and they were like, "We got a real big favor to ask you," and I was like, "Oh shit, here we go. What is it? And they're like, "We want you to write all the lyrics in your handwriting for the entire record." I was like, "Oh, I knew it." But yeah, it's terrible. I mean, you can barely read any of it, so I don't know why I'm the keeper of the board.
Well, it seems that you have you've taken on that responsibility and that role, and
I guess, yeah, it's been years, decades.
When you have a chance to get in the studio with one another, do you guys have much off time? Is it all business, getting straight into the studio and getting tracks laid down? I mean, do you guys have any time to get out, go catch a movie, do anything else, or is it all business for Sevendust when you get in those closed doors?
Well, I mean, it kind of used to be that way. I mean, we used to be the shark, where if the shark stops swimming, it's going to die. It was like we were kind of a means to an end. It was like in order to keep the machine going, we kind of had to keep moving. And, some of that was financial. Some of that was just, some business stuff that we, were in the middle of that we needed to get out of. And, it's crazy. It's like every album cycle is a little bit different. But with this one, it was weird because we took time off both before we made it and after we made it. A pretty considerable amount, too. I mean, most people, they don't look at 8 months off being a long time. But, in the world of Sevendust, that's an eternity, But we took 2 months before we started making it. We had the whole Shiprock cruise that kind of sat right on the front side of the record. And we were going to start the record before it. And then it was like, all right, why start something and then go unplug and do, a trip to the Bahamas and then try to plug back in and do all that stuff. Let's just wait until we're done with the trip. So we waited until we were done with Shiprock, hopped in the studio. And it's almost been 6 months since we finished it. So, we do sneak in the little moments of time off and break and, being able to unplug and put the daddy hat and the family hat on and do all that good stuff. But, I mean, it's still, when we leave for tour, our family knows, okay, we've had you home for 6 months, and now we're not going to see you for at least a year, for any extended period of time. But, I don't know, man. As we get older, it's like we just put more breaks in. We kind of build the family more into the schedule, and it kind of keeps things balanced. I mean, we don't go any more than 2 or 3 weeks without seeing the family, so.
That's why I just love hearing these stories over again, because, a lot of times you do a lot of interviews over 20 years in radio. You talk to so many different artists. Half of them I've forgotten I did, and then I find the file, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that's right. I talked to them. And that topic came up. But with the John conversation, just about learning about his handwriting and how he characterizes it, and then the band coming to him and asking them to write down the entire lyric sheet for the album. That's just, it's stuff that you even as a fan of a band, you wouldn't necessarily have insight to, but really cool opportunity here on the podcast to be able to reshare these stories and maybe spark your interest back up in some of these artists that are out here. Candlebox is a band that's obviously been around for a long time. A lot of hits that are still staples on rock radio in its current form. And the cool thing about how music and the digital age and how the internet has really brought a lot of bands, even from before the 90s, like a band like Candlebox, but older bands like the Stones and things, a lot of the younger generations are refinding these bands and refinding these songs because they can find them online. And I got a chance to talk to Kevin Martin of Candlebox about so many different things, about longevity, about waking up one day and saying, I guess this is my career. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Here is Kevin Martin of Candlebox.
What's the definition of insanity?
Doing it all over and over and over again.
Yeah, beating your head against the wall and expecting a different result. That's how. Honestly, I think it's we love what we do. Yeah. I don't know what the secret is. I don't know how it got here. Maybe it is because we sold 4 million records of the first album, or whatever. I'm just grateful that this is my job and that I get to do what I love. And I only have to answer to myself when something goes wrong. And so maybe that's the secret. We wrote a record 23 years ago that had 2 really, really successful songs on it. Yeah. Maybe that's why we're still here. Mm-hmm. I honestly don't know what the secret is. I'm just happy that I'm able to do this. And I think that that's really what keeps me going. You just have to be grateful that you don't have to clock in, and I remember, having to work at a shoe store. It's where I actually met all the musicians from Seattle, and and that wasn't fun having to be there, at 9 o'clock in the morning and working all day and smelling stinky feet and stuff like that. Now I only have to smell my own stinky feet, so it's a good thing.
It's a major step over 25 years. It's all about the stench of feet.
Yeah. That's how I like to look at it.
When you have that kind of, discography going back to 93 up into the latest record, how difficult of a process is it for you, each night to pick out a set list? I mean, I can't imagine having to go through that process. Obviously, what the long time Candlebox fans, they want to hear, stuff from the first couple records. But you also have, this new energy, and, when you put out a new record, you want to play the new stuff. Is it a difficult process? I mean, besides the 3 that you have to play, how tough is it for you guys to get that list set every night?
It's difficult, man. I'm not going to lie. It really is a matter of, we know we want to play the new record, as much of it as we can. So we try to squeeze 4 or 5 of those in. I know that there's more stuff that people want to hear from Lucy and Happy Pills and Into the Sun and Love Stories and Other Musings, but we really don't have that fan base that, where we've sold, 4 million copies of each record, where we have to fill out, a 25-song set like Pearl Jam does or some of those bands. So for us, knowing that we're doing 15, 16 songs in a set, we want to make sure that we play what the audience wants to hear, but also what we want to do. And that's hard, man, because I'd much rather, play the new record and Love Stories and Other Musings and Into the Sun, and it's in their entirety, than go back through the catalog.
Another cool fact about Kevin Martin, also at one point early on in his career, was a shoe salesman. I myself was also a shoe salesman back in like the early 2000s for a while I was doing radio and selling shoes at the same time. Maybe I should have kept up with that career. Maybe it would have lasted a little bit longer. No, 20 years is good enough for me. That is episode 9 of the podcast. Very cool stuff. Now, we are all available on all platforms. the Welcome to Cooperville podcast anywhere you can find it. Be sure wherever you are listening to it, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify, that you subscribe to it. You get updates every time we come out. And also, www.welcometocooperville.com. If you subscribe on there, we're sending out email newsletters every time there's a new episode, and we're going to be sending out some cool stuff from some of our awesome show sponsors. So a lot of fun stuff coming up on the Welcome to Cooperville podcast. Big shows coming up in the next few, so stay tuned.